Back in 2019, a man named Yanto in the north of Scotland was watching a video on YouTube about our search for the definition of the word number. Towards the end of the video, he was so shocked by a fundamental error in the way we think about what kinds of truths qualify as objective and what we qualify as subjective, that he unexpectedly solved existence. What he had never realized before watching the video was that our mathematicians have not yet conclusively agreed on their understanding of what the word number actually means. And the prevailing assumption is that mathematical truths can only be emergent from the presence of physical phenomena. In other words, the prevailing understanding of our mathematicians, physicists, and philosophers is that physical phenomena qualifies as the definition of that which is objectively real, and mathematical truths can only be emergent observations of the objectively real, which is physical stuff. To boil it down to its simplest essence here, our experts say physical stuff equals objectively real, mathematical truths equals subjectively relative. I have been explaining for 4 years now, in the videos I put out and which can all be freely accessed online, that having the direction of objectivity to subjectivity back to front is having the direction of causality backwards. It's very simple. That which is relative, subjective, is all that expresses over space and time. That which is objective, absolute, are those truths that remain unbroken, unchanged across all space and time. And this is the very inversion of what human culture assumes. We literally have the direction of causality back to front. That truly is the scale of the error. In terms of understanding one's own reality, it could not be a more catastrophic error of thinking, because it takes place at the very simplest and foundational of assumptions. Anything built on top of that foundational error, it's not only that it is built on a foundation that isn't a foundation, which is catastrophic enough, but whatever is built on that foundational error is inherently a further expression of that error, a further reinforcing of that error. Simple words here for a simple situation. Us having the direction of causality backwards has always been our greatest problem. It is the overwhelmingly massive problem we have continued to face throughout our shared human history that we do not even see, do not recognize as any kind of problem at all, for the simple reason that the lie is all we can remember ever having experienced or conceived of. For us humans, it basically boils down to physical stuff real, non-physical stuff, who knows. It basically amounts to a shrug from us. Us having the direction of causality backwards causes our mathematics to be broken, our sciences to be broken, our religions to be broken, our metaphysical philosophies to be broken, our own individual outlook on our own daily life and existence to be broken. That is how catastrophic this very simple and foundational error of thinking is. But we have been shrugging over it for so long that at this point we no longer expect to ever stop shrugging over it. You would reasonably think that having the direction of causality backwards being such a simple and devastating error would mean that anybody would immediately be both able to accept its correction because it is so simple, and willing to accept its correction because the consequences of the error are so devastating to us. And you would be wrong on both counts. When everything you have built for yourself since you were a child has been built on top of a lie, then everything you have built for yourself since you were a child depends on the maintenance of that lie. If it is not to all come tumbling down. Every person who comes into contact with me and the truth I bring flinches, and you should probably not expect yourself to be an exception. The truth, and me by association, is at once tempting and terrifying. The simplest, most foundational truth is not the smallest and most inconsequential truth. It is the very biggest, most consequential truth. It has the greatest impact because it is the great impact on everything, always. It is the biggest, always in effect truth. And all that is knowingly built on and from that truth is inherently a further expression of that truth. It is the truth that brings all our lies tumbling down. Both the lies we knew were lies and the lies we did not know were lies. All of them. All of them. And while me bringing the truth is me bringing the great treasure, who is there around here that is actually lucid enough to be glad, actually free from lie enough to be coherent enough to be grateful? Are you that lucid? Are you that coherent? Do you think? Shall we find out? Within the first half hour of the first of the videos on my homepage, which is the first video I wrote in 2020, just before I found out that I was Jesus, I explained that the truth that is so simple anybody is able to understand it is that objective truths can only be truths that do not change. Physical phenomena must have a non-physical cause, and the only non-physical causal agent in all existence is the objectivity of unchanging truths that cannot not be true. Or, in other words, there is absolute truth and its relative expression. That is what there is, and that is all there is. This should be a devastating realization for you, that truth comes first and physical expression follows as a direct result. But in all probability, you are more likely to not allow yourself to actually realize it, realize the full weight and acceptance of the implications of it, despite the very simple self-evidence of it. I invite you to observe that about yourself. In that first video, Proof of Nothing, I go on to define what the word number does actually mean, and I solve the problem of how to work out the square roots of negative numbers, a long unsolved problem of maths. I also explain how time works. In the second video, I explain how truths that cannot not be true and must therefore iterate relative to each other naturally result in a living, unified field of objective truth in iteration. I explain what gravity is, and I take a stab at explaining magnetism. It's a very clumsy stab, but it gets me asking myself some useful questions. I also explain in this video why quantum research cannot bring foundational understanding. These first two videos in the Proof trilogy were almost completely written, and I had already started making the first one when I found out that I was Jesus that other time. So the third video in my lecture, designed to correct our most fundamental philosophical mistakes about the nature of existence, it was the first video I wrote and put together after finding out who I was, who I am. And it contains my full confession about all of that. If Proof of Nothing is about the true nature of non-physical but objective truth, and proof of something is about how objective truth expresses at the physical level, then proof of everything is about how all of this relates to the metaphysical experience, or in other words, proof of everything reunites science and spirituality. I wrote it after and while still going through the hardest time of my life. In that video, I identified that the real golden rule, so to speak, that humanity has consistently failed to identify is: we do not let the child be harmed. Not letting our children be harmed is conspicuous by its absence from the Ten Commandments, and it is conspicuous by its absence from all human culture. It is not so much that human nature is inherently cruel to children, but more a case of human culture simply not knowing how to not harm the child, because human culture is built out of amnesia of who we, the eternal child, are. The way to not harm the eternal child is to let them know that they are the eternal child and help them to understand what that means. And of course, to help them understand that, one must first understand it oneself. There's a whole section of MP3s that follow the Proof Trilogy videos. Most of these haven't made it to YouTube. In order to listen to them, one would actually have to take the trouble to go to my website and click on them. I think there are some real gems in there, some thoughts that haven't been repeated in the subsequent videos. All of the videos and MP3s on the first half of the homepage are laid out in chronological order. So if you watch and listen to them one after the other, you can specifically track the progressive development of a man who solved existence and was then informed he was Jesus. How does his very logical way of looking at reality blend into spiritual understandings? Below the main section of MP3s and videos can be found a small section of images that can be downloaded, a section on my creative writing, which includes a couple of fantasy novels that are really very good, along with a small collection of poetry, a section on my songwriting, a small collection of fictional dramas I made, and then a collection of my music videos. All of the material on this page can be both viewed and downloaded for free, and it is all released into the public domain by me, so that anybody may share and use it as they see fit. I would like to see more creative types release their creativity out into the public domain like this. I would like to see all creatives release their creativity into the public domain the moment it is completed, so that it may be of the most use to us all that it possibly can be. Finally, at the bottom of the page are links to my 2 YouTube channels. There is more to be seen from me at each of these locations. This human life is not a practice session for being eternal. It is not a test to see if you might qualify for being eternal. This human life is the current expression of your eternity. This human moment is a fully fledged moment of eternity. It lacks nothing that would qualify it as such. All is present and correct. The eternal, ever-present, ever-in-effect core truths. The ever-unique, infinite definition, expression, and experience of being that eternal truth. The knowingness that is both the cause and the recipient of it all. You. All is present and correct. Here in this very human, completely unique moment in eternity, this moment in us. The one who is eternal is here, present in this once in an eternity moment. And that eternal one is you. This never stops being true. It cannot ever stop being true. This is the nature of being the eternal. And our recurring amnesia of this, it is our greatest saving grace in eternity. A saving grace that we celebrate with a glad heart when we do see the truth of it clearly enough. This human moment, it is the physical end of this one moment in eternity that we, the one who is a collective, are currently sharing. It is never going to be exactly like this moment ever again in all eternity. Take your meaning from that, or do not, as you see fit. And then what? And then what? And what then? Here's the thing about declining my invitation to know yourself as the eternal. You declining the invitation to know truth does not in any way stop truth from being true. So you can see this man, Yanto, as a man whose invitation should be declined, but from his point of view, it doesn't matter in the slightest if you decide to pass on the truth. It does not break truth that cannot be broken. He's only looking forward to witnessing the behaviour of those who do emerge from the sludge of self-polarization. He's just on the lookout for something to smile about.